Hello and a warm welcome to you wherever you are worshipping today. My name is William Glasse from Framlingham United Free Church, and it is a privilege to be sharing with you. If you have used the readings that were set for today and in the written material which I have provided, you'll have read from the Old Testament the account of Hannah's fervent prayer in the temple when in her childlessness she petitions God, hoping, praying, believing that God can help her to have a son. And she promises that if a son is born, she will dedicate his life in the service of the Lord. And then from the New Testament, in the Gospel, Jesus with 3 of his disciples walked through Jerusalem past the magnificent temple. Disciples remark on the extraordinary building, the grandeur, and Jesus comments on their comment. But as text to draw my thoughts together from Psalm 16 and its verse 9, "Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body will also rest secure." A bright hope for tomorrow. When people ask me what I do for a living, sometimes I will reply that I'm paid to worry. My job is partly about facing up to things that may go wrong routinely, or occasionally and catastrophically, and looking for ways of mitigating or eliminating those risks. And put like that, it sounds easy. To my way of thinking, a starting point for risk management is establishing how great a risk really is by stripping away figments of people's sometimes overactive imagination. The converse is that I run the risk of being desensitized and downplaying something very serious. In our gospel reading, Jesus got into a conversation with the disciples, Peter, James, and John, which gave him the entree to talk about perspective. From a passing comment, a couple of steps in the conversation took Jesus from present to future and let him talk about the long term. It's worth locking in these steps in our minds. The comment was about the great stones used to construct the magnificent temple buildings. That was fact. 19 years before Jesus was born, Herod the Great had begun to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. In a quick retort, Jesus predicted the future destruction of the buildings, which happened in AD 70, thanks to the Roman general Titus, who was later emperor. The disciples asked the natural question, when will that happen? A specific question to which Jesus answered generally, with a few warnings. That wars and rumours of wars happen all the time, but they are not necessarily a sign of the end. Natural phenomena that cause destruction, like earthquakes, are not necessarily a sign of the end. False prophets will come with deceitful messages that win people over, but they need to be avoided. And the end is further away than we may think, so we must not catastrophize every tough event that happens. Move out of the first century narrative and into the moment. Read the newspaper, listen to the radio, watch television, and the news is frequently harsh. Read social media, and it is often distorted and sometimes catastrophized. People are upset by it, and we have a reported mental health crisis on our hands especially among younger people. On the other hand, it's encouraging to read reports that there is a trend emerging that suggests that being part of the church is good for people's mental health. And that may even knock on into physical health too. What is less understood, and so less commonly reported, is that both have their roots in spiritual health. Why? Why is that? A popular hymn these days is "Great is Thy Faithfulness," based on verses from Lamentations and the letter of James. It was written in 1923 for a church in Chicago. There's a slightly similar and older hymn which I've always loved, written by John Keble. His "New every morning is the love my wakening and uprising prove." Both hymns are about spiritual solidity built on the foundation of an unchanging, ever love-renewing God, which is a source for joy in all times, the reasons for there being rainbows and rain together. The Greek word that's translated joy is associated with overflowing from the heart, and much more than a notional expression of joy with the lips or whistling to keep up the spirits. Fraudsters cannot bring about what Jesus inspires. And so we're back to his teaching. The psalmist put it well. My heart is glad, my tongue rejoices, and my body rests secure. I feel safe. Does this feel pie in the sky? If it does, then possibly we have not understood ourselves well enough to know the risks that undermine us, or we have not met the real, the genuine Jesus. And that thought brings me to Hannah. Samuel, Hannah's longed-for son, was an important character in his day. But what I want us to focus on is Hannah's state of mind when she went to the temple to pray. For all of us who wanted children and are fortunate to have them, this is a good story with a happy ending. For many more people, it is a difficult story with the power to cause hurt and bitterness. Couples who desperately want children and are not able to have them for many reasons feel as though they are let down by life. And then, increasingly in our time, the choice not to have children is one made after great thought and for many reasons. Whatever the case, it is no longer right or safe to assume that all marriages and life partnerships are going to result in the family. Culturally, for Hannah, to have a child was important, and it was her dream. By being a mother, she would be fulfilled. Add to that the obvious tension, because Elkanah's other wife, Peninnah, produced children, and you have the perfect recipe for jealousy. Elkanah tried to mitigate it by focusing on their relationship, but Hannah was depressed and she didn't want to hear. Now let go of the theme of the blessing to a woman of bearing children and come into our world. Whether justified or not, there are things that we consider we are entitled to have, and not to have them makes us depressed, dejected, sad, or just frustrated. Use whatever example you like from your own experience, and you will realize that to get the things you feel entitled to makes you feel better and removes a blocker from your view of God lets you see more clearly the world in all its colour and bigger perspective. Sometimes those things that you really want are minor. Sometimes they're major and life-changing. That is human nature. Hannah was transformed by her pregnancy. The theme that runs through the teaching of Jesus is being careful what you wish for. Yes, some things are harmful, but more importantly, some desires focus on the short term, when, as Jesus was trying to get the disciples to understand, the long term is more significant, and to be content with the view we have of that gives peace. The peace of God that passes all understanding. The psalm goes on to talk of not being abandoned to the grave, and became an important theme for both St. Peter and St. Paul in the light of knowing that Jesus rose from the dead, whereas King David, central to the Psalms, had eventually died an ordinary mortal death. If you stand back and think, is it surprising that mental health benefits accrue from being at peace in a faith in life beyond death? The text I began with was, "Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices, my body also will rest secure." The peace we really need and should want more than anything else, not because it is a virtue, but because it is a boon, brings us to the place Hannah was in after Samuel was born, and which Jesus wanted Peter, James, and John to see. A peace which says, I feel good inside. I feel safe in the world. I feel free to express my joy in God. Not because I'm good or the world is safe. Both are often not true. But because God has enabled me to feel content. Today I pray that you will share that prayer for yourselves. A prayer to feel good inside, to feel safe in the world and free to express your joy in God because of what He has done for you, just as He has done it for me. And so to God, the source of eternal joy and peace, be glory, now and always. Amen.